Greetings again and welcome back. Okay, so here we are for the Oracle section of today's episode of 1320 Time Stream covering the Overtone Wizard. Now, let's get right into it. We have the Overtone Wizard. Remember to pause these because I usually go through them quick. The Overtone Serpent. The Overtone Wind. The Overtone Seed, and the Solar Hand. First thing that comes to mind here when we start talking about the Overtone Serpent is that both Overtone and Serpent are number 5. The Overtone is 5 of 13 and the Serpent is 5 of 20. And so the first thing that comes through is both of them are kind of a synchronistic representation of that 5 energy in their own respective kind of like groupings. So, empowering that survival, empowering that instinctual energy, which you could say is like behind the nature of reaction. In the way that we can like train the body and things like that, there's an instinctual nature to it. There's also an aspect of, commanding our sexual energy, commanding our life force that shows up. And another way of like that serpentine kind of, how to put that, the fangs on the serpent, the kind of that sharp cutting, very kind of individual reptilian brain process of there, which can also be very commanding. So there's a number of different kind of fundamentals. There's a primal nature that I see in the serpent, which can represent one of the fundamentally very readily available powers today. And so, as always with the helping power, is it's nice to recognize its influence, allow it to help you when you feel you really need that, that tip, but don't let it have too much presence, because the helping power, again, can take away from you embracing the challenge. And so the challenge, you have a little more work to do. The helping power is just kind of there. It's also an energy that may just show up very easily. It's not necessarily like helping you. It's an energy, even though like it isn't, like, it's so interesting the way we see it all. But you could say that the analog represents not just the helping power, but the energy that's there very presently. And so if it is maybe a more aggressive, sharper version of the commanding snake, then, maybe that's like, oh, okay, like, it is time to plant other seeds instead, to power other ideas, right? Kind of thing. And so seeing what quadrants they're in really help us kind of make a call around how to show up in the veils of these energies. The Overtone Wind, we have what I call the commanding breath. I find this very empowering because it's like a great speaker. To me, that's what I see. It's like a great speaker. It's like a being who is being listened to, a being who has an impeccable delivery, a voice that can only be heard. Right? Now, this can take on many qualities. It can have an impeccable and undaunted delivery. It can also have an overbearing and forceful tone and a domineering, dominating presence. And so how it shows up can be very different, as always. The other part of it shows that there could be, in like an empowering, commanding wind energy, a very strong gusto or force that could be seen in a person. The overtone wind could even be contributed to anger, unnecessary explosive tendencies, things like that. These are the kind of things that can lead into storm energies. So winds are interesting because they can borderline on storm-like qualities, and the actual hidden power of the wind is the storm, and the hidden power of the storm is the wind. So there is the wind's connection with the storm, and so they do sometimes share each other's qualities in some respects. Very much like as well, like, when we take a look at the storm's self-generative quality, self-generation, the wind is similar. It's like, what actually generates the wind? It seems to be a very sentient, standalone function. It just kind of shows up, right? I think there's a bunch of different theories about what actually creates the wind. What is that movement of energy? You know, there's this one part of it where it is an element in which it is part of the earth, air, water, and fire. And so it has a very kind of like physical, physiological dialectic in its kind of logical, scientific operationals, like how it shows up, how it operates. But then there's the kind of like energetic aspect to it. Like, oh, it's the time that a wind shows up. What is the sound or smell it's carrying on it? There's that very spiritual aspect of the wind, which I think why it's very appropriate to, you know, see the part of it that's spirit. We call it the spirit breath, right? And so there's a way of, you know, seeing the wind as a very externalized element and also as an internalized element, and there's many types of energies that it all represents. And so here it's also like empowering spirit, right? This spiritus, there's a soul of things. And I also find that's very appropriate to pair with the overtone, because in conjunction with tone 4, I feel the overtone represents, like, as we take command of the form, a form body that has been formed, you know, magnetic, lunar, electric, self-existing. That self-existing is like, in some way, it's like an empty box. It's like 4. So we have this kind of square energy. And like 5 is the first thing that forms the line. And it's kind of like penetrating. And what I kind of mean is it's like a box being filled. And no, I'm not making a pseudo-sexual reference, even though we could tag in on these areas if this, you know, this kind of an archetype or this kind of like a subtle innuendo brings wisdom or enlightenment to a relevant moment or energy that's showing up for us. Though what I'm really saying is it's like 4 can be lifeless. It can be a static definition, which is why it's still kind of like between the mental and physical qualities. You know, it's like things are defined. It could be more like the blueprint, as well as it could be more of like, you know, the lumber on a house. While number 5, take command, you know, could be the blueprint set in motion to be building. So now there's life in the blueprint. There's so many ways to take a look at them. And so for me, the overtone does represent that taking command is like there's vitality and life and force in a thing that has been defined. And so the wind helps, I feel, kind of like exemplify that and really empower the unification of both those energies to like be a life breathing force, to be of something that gives motion, vitality, life, movement, vita to something. And we're guided by that. The challenging power, the overtone seed, the first thing that comes up for me is like empowering ideas. Now, I find it's really positive to pair this with the helping power, which is the serpent, especially if the serpent is like holding a little bit of that sharper tone, maybe a little bit of standoffishness, right? Maybe there's a little bit more primal, instinctual cutting of that serpent energy, which can be a little more commanding, potentially even dominating. And so this seed energy, it takes on a couple of forms. Like the first thing that I want to bring light to is like empowering new ideas, new seed structures. It's like, well, maybe we are cultivating and we got this serpent thing going on. Maybe this doesn't matter how it's showing up, but I feel the way I'm explaining the seed right now, at least for the first part, is to plant some new seeds. Like, you know what, let's throw some new ideas out there. These things have run through the mind, or these things have been influences in the field. So let's just, you know, start to grow some new life. Right? Let's make that happen. The other aspect which I see about the seed is it's like, you know, it's an energy that's in its shell. The seed is life becoming, but it's still in its shell. The serpent is actually the seal directly after the seed. And so the serpent kind of represents the released life force, which is why it goes into the Kundalini and sexual energy as well. Right? And so we have this like commanding awareness energy, empowering awareness energy, radiating, flowering. And so the seed is a very representative process, especially where flowering is concerned, of the shell opening up, right? And becoming the flower. Light and energy comes in, kind of that seed. It inspires and sparks the growth, and it becomes a thing. So, it may be challenging to nurture seeds. It may be challenging to, water the proverbial plant in order to help give it nurturing, right? So that it can spring, so that it can have new growth. And the other kind of maybe shadow aspect to it is something that is delicate or has been growing locks up and goes back into its shell. And this can be very challenging today. This is happening during the evening time. It's happening in that challenging energy of the day. And it's just the third energy of the day, generally. And so, there's different dynamics, right? Like every single possible dynamic is present. And it's very much like the gene keys, too. If you really think about it, we have the shadow, the gift, and the city, right? So all of these particular energies have many phases of how they show up. And we can kind of get linear and be like, well, wherever you're at, depending on your level of growth and evolution, they will have different qualities. But I also feel that, regardless on your own personal, perspective on growth and evolution, I feel that all of these different qualities are simultaneously going to shimmer like many lights in a prism, many, many lights in a crystal. And so I feel that, we can never be too evolved, so to speak. Right? We've never really finished our journey because we were born finished. And throughout life, we may always be seeking. And so we kind of live in that paradox of the paradox of being within duality, but never really being able to be statically bound to a single pole. That being said, all the different energies that the signs and tones can represent will be represented as they need to show up in your life because they are also a sentient force. So it's really interesting, planting seeds, helping things that have been planted grow, empowering that new growth, empowering those seeds to be kind of penetrated by that life-giving energy so that awareness can flower. On the hidden power, the solar hand. That's an interesting one. And this one is like intentionally guided knowledge because the solar tone is pulse, realize, intention. Like realizing healing. Can we realize the healing within a thing? Imagine for a moment that the seed does actually represent something that's closed up because of maybe the serpent energy, right? Let's just create an analogy. The serpent energy is fierce, right? The breath becomes domineering. The seed represents something closing up. And the hand represents a realizing of knowledge or healing, which allows the whole thing to kind of open up again, right? I'm just kind of creating that because you can see a flow, like how you translate and begin to see yourself, how you translate and begin to see the world as a continuum. You can begin to see the direct connection of why these signs are paired together. And it's not like any of them were chosen. Oh yeah, let's choose to put these here. No, they were part of a mathematical formula that allows them to have a really tight relationship with each other. And so that tightness is kind of like how the energy flows through them in this kind of more intergalactic synchronistic level. It's like, why is there such relevance? Right? Do we fabricate the relevance, or is there a sentience producing a direct energy conduit that flows between them? And so that we can see not just a direct relationship, but a very precise and unhindered motion of energy, a wave, right? Because that's what all this system is made of. It's made of these interdimensional waves, these waveforms, which flow unhindered because they are the natural form of energy in motion, you could say, within this expression, and that is the waveform. And so we have here that intentional knowledge, that like realizing healing kind of energy. It is the work of the builder. It's the touch healer. You could be getting a massage tonight. You could be getting smacked in the face tonight, right? It's like, let's obviously I would empower and focus on the positive aspects of the hand, but it encompasses so many things. I do feel that this is a great night for body work. It's a great night for touch healing, an intentional touch, safe touch. I've done a lot of this work with people, particularly, especially people who have different wounds in different areas, especially sexual traumas. And to be able to have touch in certain places all over the body allows for a resonance and an imprint within the body's resonance structure to now collect a memory which is not, say, hungry for its body. It has no ill intent. It has no sexual hunger. It is safe. It is sacred. And so this actually brings that up for me a lot, is the intentional touch or sacred touch or safe touch. It's a really good practice to get into. Yeah, and so let's see what else. Realizing knowledge. Yeah, that last little blip could be like a fundamental quality of like realizing knowledge, because we're realizing something and that becomes this knowledge. So yeah, it's a really interesting day today, with there's an inherent magic, in the middle of it, as the overtone wizard empowering that, timeless enchantment, empowering that kind of wizard tech, in a way, that like dynamic complexity, which for some seems so simple, like someone specialized at a type of job, or a special current of energy. Those are very wizardly to me in those representations. So that will sum up the oracle section for today in our episode here of 1320 Time Stream. Stay tuned for the Mayan pyramid meditation.